Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious. That's a little happy birthday to Virgin Galactic. That this is a picture from today's suborbital flight where they finally took a paid customer up and a mother-daughter out of their lottery that they had. So SpaceX is ready to commercialize suborbital flights, and we'll talk all about that. Marty, thank you for choosing that beautiful picture there to give you an idea that it's taken up by this tandem aircraft and then released, and then the jet goes off. We had Stutko was the commander, C.J. Stutko, 4 times a shuttle pilot. He was the commander up front. We'll give you an insight of that, as on today's Stay Curious, brought to you by Go History Channel. Let me put them up there, gohistorytravel.org. Our friends, the Rom family, have got a website. They've been traveling over Europe, and they have some very interesting sites. And kind of their son, Bharat, does some interesting photography. We're going to show you a site that they've been to that plays in today's space history. But we want y'all to make sure you figured out where you're going to watch the Perseid meteor shower Saturday night. Lose some sleep or get up about 2 a.m. Sunday morning and go over to, of course, a safe place in your own property or somewhere else. And you're going to see, I guarantee you, 10 meteors an hour. They advertise 100 meteors an hour. But because of light pollution and you turning your head the wrong direction, you're going to see a good 10, 15, maybe 20 every hour, hopefully more. There's always a little peak there right before dawn where there seems to be the most, because the Earth is turned into the storm of comet debris from Comet Swift-Tuttle, and this debris has been laid out on a orbit for thousands of years. And though it's a Swift-Tuttle is a comet that last came around in 1992, I believe, it won't be around for another 150 years, but it's like a dump truck putting out all kinds of gravel on the road. And when you go intersect that path of gravel or meteoroids, they burn up instantly in our atmosphere, like this picture from my friend Matt Harbison. So they seem to radiate out of the constellation Perseus, which doesn't rise above the horizon until after midnight. So definitely after midnight, you're going to see the most. And then about 3, 4 a.m., Perseus is way up high, and those meteors are like a rain or snowstorm that you're driving through at night with the headlights on it. They seem to be emanating from a point in front of you, but they're really not. They're just coming from all different directions. It's the Earth's motion in space that makes it radiate like that. In Perseus, who's got Medusa in his hand there. He was the slayer and hero in the mythological story of Andromeda, Perseus, and all those characters are in the sky. Well, there's that beautiful shot of flying from Spaceport America in the New Mexico desert. The first paid-for passengers flew suborbital Thursday morning, creating a new era for Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic spaceplane that will ferry hundreds to the edge of space. Marty, the passengers aboard the craft were this man. Let's see, this man here in the center, 80-year-old British Olympian John Goodwin, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, and a mother-daughter, Keisha Sherhoff, 46, and Anna Myers, 18. They're from Antigua and Barbuda, and they won their tickets in a lottery. And sitting inside the cockpit for Unity was Commander C.J. Stutko, former NASA astronaut, and mission specialist Kelly Latimer. There's some of them inside. This was the landing phase. I watched some of it live, Marty, on YouTube, like hopefully you're watching us on YouTube today. And in the ferry plane were Nicola Pensale and Mike Machichi. So this event, called Galactic O2, opens up the commercial era for Virgin Galactic. They have taken in, Marty, 800 passengers have paid $200,000 to $250,000 a decade ago. But now the company has reopened ticket sales 2 years ago. and ticket prices are beginning at $450,000 a seat. So that $1 million I'm going to inherit, I'll buy you a seat, buy me a seat, and then we'll have $100,000 to party in the Mexican desert with, all right? For 5 minutes of weightlessness. Well, among the backlog of 800 passengers is our friend Yves Pludeau, Frenchman, who's Too Sweet is his nickname. Yves was he or Marty? I remember he was like number 350 or something like that. Yeah. Seems he was a couple hundred in line there. So, but he paid a little over $200,000 10 years ago and has been waiting this long. He still wants to go, and Yves, maybe we'll look you up and try to get a program on you. But that plane takes it up to 500,000 feet. All right, there's the there's the space plane, the tandem spaceship 2 vehicle takes it up to 500,000 feet, drops it, which fires its rocket motor to climb the rest of the way to space and experience a couple minutes of suborbital flight. It was the youngest person on the suborbital flight, 18 years old, must be younger than that young man that went up. The first mother-daughter duo, the first citizens of Antigua, and the first women from the Caribbean, and the first Olympian, the 80-year-old British Olympian, Goodwin. Doesn't say what he was in the Olympics for, but he was the second person diagnosed with Parkinson's to go to space. So they're off and running. The dream is, Marty, that they do this 2 or 3 times a day. Okay. Remember, Eve told us that it's 2 or 3 times a day flying out of there, and hundreds of people a month experiencing suborbital. Hundreds of rich people, let's say, a month experiencing suborbital flight. Marty, what do you think of all this in the space age you've seen before your eyes as a NASA contractor for Grumman and then Space Shuttle?
I really think it's great. It's just unfortunate that it costs so much money, for the private citizen to go to space. But overall, I think it's great if you can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, 80 grand's plenty. $250,000 to $450,000 now. I'm telling you, that's. But they're lined up, and they'll have 2 or 3 of these vehicles in motion. So we'll look forward to seeing that. Well, Marty, re-grab that UCAC family microphone there and tell us a little bit about your field trip with our good friend Bart out at the Space Center, please, sir.
Yeah, Bart and I went out there went out there Monday, look at the MLP-3, which they're demolishing. And what we're looking at this is the east side. This is the side that would be, leading, going out to the pad. And they haven't done much work on that side. If you look at the south side, they're really ripping it apart. And ripping may be the wrong terminology. They're taking it apart. And when I first got there and I looked at it, you cannot even recognize it as an MLP from that side. It is so demolished. And that right there is Frank. Frank is
Charmoot?
Yeah. He's the son of the owner.
Frank Charmoot of Franklin Industries.
Yeah, and the business is named after him and his sister. That's Frank of Franklin and his sister. And that's the east side. That's the south side. That's where a major part of the demolition is taking place right now. And again, I can't recognize that as an MLP.
Yeah, well, no, that actually looks like a hotel that they're tearing apart or something. Kind of gives you that feel of the infrastructure we've talked about. And we had a program at our Shuttle Fest 2, the documentary Base to Space, Mobile Launch Platform 2, with our friend Mike Cotton, the producer of that. Hello out there, Mike. This, Marty, this is a historic, this is not a hunk of scrap iron. This has some history to it. Please tell us, sir, what launches were off this?
Well, I'd say the main. It's really noted for launching Apollo 8, 9, and 11. And I'm sure it launched a multitude of space shuttles, but I could not tell you which ones they launched. But Apollo 8, 9, and 11 for sure.
And that's fascinating. And did they mention if they were saving some of these pieces to market for merchandise purchase?
No, I didn't ask that question. But the reason we went out there was to take with asked if we can take a little piece of the MLP, and I got one big piece called a vibration isolator. It was used to mount on the bottom of large equipment inside the MLP to reduce the vibration.
I took a picture of that, Marty, and we should have brought it in. But show me the one you have there to put online there. This is
that right there is probably about 1/5, 1/6 the size of the big heavy one I brought in.
yeah. This is a vibration that the wires. I can't even pull the wires on it. Okay, I can't. You can't. They're so. I'm giving all my old man strength there and can't even budge them. But things. What would be resting on that?
There's no telling what it was, other than it'd be normally electronic or pneumatic equipment that was sensitive to vibrations. So the unit would be sitting, on top of it. The equipment would be sitting on top of it, and obviously the bottom side would be sitting on the deck.
Mm-hmm. But how they make that so stiff? It's just a kind of a spring mechanism there. But the piece you brought off that MLP is about 2 feet wide.
Yeah, do you want me to go get it?
I took a picture of it there, in there. Well, seeing what yeah, go get it there. Yeah, go get it there a second, Marty. We'll show it there. And I'll make a comment here, a kind of a public service announcement comment. Marty has been so involved in this community where he brought his family 60-some years ago. And I'm privileged to be involved with our community as involved with the Museums of Brevard. And there's 22 museums in the county, Brevard County, that we keep telling you is the birthplace of America's space age. And we're in the delivery room. And these 22 museums were loosely organized for many years, and our museum had something to do with bringing them together in the beginning. And so I was assigned to go to the Museums of Brevard. We called the mob. I didn't go to a meeting one time, and they made me president. So I've been president of the mob for the last 4 years. And happily, we deposited $6,100 worth of checks from those museums today to create a bank account for the Museums of Brevard. And it's one of those things in life for me that I go, how'd this happen? But I know how it happened is I came down here to follow a dream of mine to help this American Space Museum with my acquired talents and my 50 years of journalism and photography and sales. And I feel, and telling you all, I'm very blessed that it's working out beyond my expectations. Stay Curious is another example where we wanted to reach out during the pandemic to let people know our little museum wasn't going to lay down, particularly the people that give us thousands of dollars. And we wanted to do a video podcast, and now we're well into our 860th show of doing this together, our whole team here at the American Space Museum and Marty Winkle. My way to stall to bring this piece of hardware in here, but if you're doing something in your community, great. And if you're not, maybe you got to give back in a way. And for me, it's always putting in the bank what I call good karma, and do unto others, and things seem to work out for you. So I'm very blessed, and the Museums of Brevard have become an influence here on the Space Coast, and it's not all my doings. It's just the leadership we put together. Marty, a question there.
Comment from Dave Stange. They said John Goodwin competed in canoeing in the '72 Olympics.
All right, that is the Olympic guy here that we taught. The 80-year-old that went to space on this Virgin Galactic was in canoeing. Thank you, Dave Stange, top fan out there. Here is back to this picture of the MLP-3 out there that launched Apollo 8, 9. You said 11, Marty?
Yep.
In there. This is what he was talking about in comparison. Let me flip that up there. I'll put the one beside it I was holding. Ugh. Yeah, I can barely hold it with one hand. And this is the one you got out there yesterday, and this is one that you've had on there. Like I said, this thing doesn't...
Yeah, you can see where it's bolted to the ground, the deck. and then there'll be other stanchions resting on top.
Yeah. So, real piece of space hardware off a mobile launch platform that's launched many a shuttle and our Apollo program there. So, well, the rest of Stay Curious, we've got sort of a special insight to one of our favorite people that we can't talk about enough on Stay Curious, and we've talked about a lot. One of Marty and I's favorite, and that is, of course, Robert Goddard. Robert Goddard died on this date, August 10th, 1945, folks. All right. And this is one of his great sayings. It is difficult to say what is impossible, for the dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow. The dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow. Now just think about things in the last 20 years that have completely revolutionized our world. That's easy for me, Marty, because 20 years ago, actually, let's go 25 years ago. 25 years ago, I was managing a Ritz camera in Bristol, Tennessee, and the digital cameras came on the scene, and all of a sudden, we never thought film would be replaced by digital cameras. Yep, it certainly has. Did anybody think that you could possibly build a chair out of 3D printing? Or how about a whole rocket engine or rockets out of 3D printing? Those are realities today that yesterday, we thought it was impossible for some of these things to happen. This is a man that knew he was up against great odds when he was trying to dream the impossible. And Robert Goddard, who died on this date in 1945 at age 62 of throat cancer. He was born in 1882. Now, that's just 20 years after the Civil War, all right? And yet what this man did is truly the father of modern rocketry. He created everything that is being used today by every rocket company on planet Earth, and he had it all figured out by 1936. 1936, folks. Let's see, Marty, carry the one and all that. What is that, 87 years ago. He had it all figured out. In 1926, Goddard constructed and successfully tested the first liquid fuel rocket. Of course, that's the history of it. March 16th, 1926 at Auburn, Massachusetts. A significant event in history as the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk in 1903. We honor him out at Spaceview Park. Let's go this way. Spaceview Park, our Mercury Gallery. We not only honor him, they honor the Chinese in their solid fuel rockets in a paver like this one of Robert Goddard out there. There's that paver out there. The first flight of a liquid-fueled rocket, gasoline rocket, occurred on his aunt's farm. It went 184 feet in 2.5 seconds, 60 miles an hour. All that metal work is the contraption that holded all the liquid fuel with it. So his rare talent in creative science and practical engineering was well known, but he was criticized by some of his bold statements saying that that we can go to the moon. All right, and I'll talk about that here in a second. There was a stamp honoring him. Some of Goddard's contributions to spaceflight would be a lengthy list, but some of the highlights are: he explored the practicality of using rocket propulsion to reach high altitudes, even the moon, in 1912. He proved a rocket will work in a vacuum, that it needs no air to push against it. And that is something that a major newspaper, I'm going to show you in a minute, even doubted, in why he became a recluse. He developed and fired, of course, the first liquid fuel rocket. He put the first scientific payload on a rocket in 1929. He used vanes on the rocket motor blast for guidance. He developed a gyro control apparatus for rocket flight in 1932. After his tests in Massachusetts, he went out to New Mexico, actually, the UFO city, Marty. Roswell, Mexico. He went out there, of all places, in 1932 with about $100,000 from the Smithsonian and his university, a small university in Massachusetts, Worcester, gave him some money. But I was thinking about this today, Marty. In his 20 years, from 1926 till he died in 1945, he launched rockets for 20 years. I'll bet he didn't have $10 million in 1930s type money to use. Okay, $100,000 would be about $1 million. And over 20 years, he may have got some stipends like that. Nothing really. And one of his supporters was Lindbergh. Yeah, Lindbergh gave him private money and sought him money. But he didn't have a big corporation or NASA or government agency chipping in millions of dollars. And so I think it's very poignant to point out that he was so underfinanced, and yet received a patent on the multi-stage rocket, developed pumps suitable for rocket fuels, launched a rocket with a motor that pivoted on gimbals under the influence of a gyro mechanism in 1937. Definitely needed to reach space. Marty, you were going to comment.
Yeah, he never got money directly from Lindbergh. Lindbergh was responsible for getting him funding from Gutenberg.
That's right, the Gutenberg, big name of the time. Brilliant man, way ahead of his time, of course. Goddard became intrigued by space after reading H.G. Wells' science fiction novel, The War of the Worlds. Worcester Polytech Institute is where he got his education, and he went back and got his a doctorate in physics from Clark University. Just on and on about him, we'd love to talk about, but I suggest this, and in our post today on Facebook, go find a good book about Goddard and read it. You will not be disappointed. You will be amazed at what this man had going on in the 1930s, and it wasn't until 20-some years later when we finally orbited things around the Earth. He could have done it in the 30s easily. He was on the verge of doing it. Look at there. He's talking about the limit of the atmosphere, 200 miles, limit of a balloon, 20 miles. And then he said that boldly, here he is with his crew out there. I love a picture like this. That was courtesy of him with his colleagues building a rocket. This is what the first rockets looked like. Okay, there's Goddard, second from right, the bald gentleman, in his the first rocket crew out there. Truly, everything he did out there was a first. Hopes to reach moon with a giant rocket. This was the New York Times in May 1924. 1924. All right. Now, the legend, the myth is that that he had a dream as a young man, about 17 years old. He climbed a cherry tree. No, he's 10 years, and he had a vision. He was 10 years old. He saw a huge flying machine propelled by whirling, unequaled horizontal centrifugal forces rising from a pit heading for Mars. Although he would never give up working on a perpetual motion device, he abandoned the idea when he discovered Newton's laws of motion. So, wanting to say he's going to the moon, and they basically, an editorial said he was a crackpot. All right, they said that does not know the relation of action to reaction, and of the need to have something to push against a vacuum. And it said that he lacked the daily knowledge ladled out in high schools. All right, in an editorial. Well, the New York Times published that in January 13th, 1920, before he even launched his rockets. He was just talking about it, and they printed a correction the day after the Apollo 11 moon landing. Okay.
That's Apollo 8.
after Apollo 8. Yeah, Apollo 8 going around the moon is now definitely established that a rocket can function in the vacuum of space as well in the Earth's atmosphere. The time regrets the error is what there it is right there. So, very not misunderstood man. As the rest of the world didn't understand what he knew. Robert Goddard is buried on a golf course. Okay, the father of modern rocketry is out on a golf course. Oh, I didn't write that latest version down there for me, Marty. It's in, and we heard about that from our friends at Go History Travel that went out there. This is the story about it there. If I look up there close, that's in Packachaw Golf Course. All right, so the 9th hole, it's in Auburn, Massachusetts. All right, and there's an obelisk there that says that here the first liquid-fueled rocket was launched on that obelisk there. So he was a reclusive, of course, yet he when the German Allied, when von Braun and his team of German scientists surrendered to the Allied troops in 1945, the great V-2 rocket engineer Werner von Braun was asked how he knew so much about rockets. And von Braun replied, "I learned it from your Goddard." All right. So in the 1940s, von Braun was using Goddard's 1920s technology there on the V-2 rocket there that is the great grandbaby of the Saturn V. There's where, yeah, I'd love to play golf there, Marty. And so what would von Braun think about, or what would Goddard think about today and the dreams of today? Hopefully he'd say the same thing, that no dream is impossible, is what he's saying there. So hope you enjoyed a little retrospective look at Robert Goddard. Don't call me Bob. I don't think anybody probably called him Bob. It was always Robert. Father of modern rocketry, died on this date in 1945. Wow, that's a long time ago. 80 years almost. And look at all the fundamentals right there in that picture. That's exactly what he was dreaming about. We hope it will become a reality. And we can look at a beautiful scene here of a special cloud, Pileus cloud, that Marty shared with me that he came across the other day. A good way to go out on our show today and say thank you, Dave Stange, for helping us and your granddaughter there. Space Monkey's been watching. Bill Whiting, Doug Forrest, Tom Usiak, Carlton Bailey, and all of you that have found us on YouTube. We are putting the link up on Facebook to YouTube. Please go there and watch our program, as that's how we can monetize for our nonprofit your viewing pleasure. So, Marty, everything looked good today. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing that picture. That is an iridescent cloud. That's a one-of-a-kind type of shot. It was in Japan, I think, or Taiwan or somewhere like that. It could happen anywhere, but it's a special conditions of clouds and atmosphere meeting there. So thank you, GoHistoryTravel.org, for your support of Stay Curious. And Saturday night, good excuse to stay up late or get up early and get out there on a lawn chair with a blanket. Have your favorite beverage, maybe your earbuds in your ear with some space music, and catch you some shooting stars. So, Marty, thank you very much. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a program I've been researching for a couple of weeks about some of the old concepts of going to the moon in the 1950s. What is going to land on the moon the last week of August, and what two superpowers are planning to team up and create a base on the moon. We'll share all that with you tomorrow on Stay Curious on Future Friday. Until then, I'm Marquette saying we can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.